Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to the channel. I'm Ben, and this is my 2018 Suzuki DR650, and this is my 2023 Honda XR650L. I traded and purchased both of these bikes this season to turn them into something similar to the Gen 2 and Gen 3 KLRs that I've ridden in the past, but also to test them side by side on some of my favorite trails. My dad and I have been out several times, and we certainly have noticed some differences.
It's bizarre. You get on one and it's like you don't even know how to ride a motorcycle anymore.
Yeah, this thing feels so weird.
And even with the XR lowered about an inch in comparison to the DR, it still feels, well,
Much taller, but also much easier to wheelie.
That thing got a little bit more pep to it.
Yeah, partially because of the 14-tooth sprocket, I think.
And while I haven't released the videos yet, I have been out testing a 14-tooth sprocket on the DR, and there is still something left to be desired between the two, some of which I think can be chalked up to the fact that the back end of the XR, as well as the front, is just much stiffer, and because a lot of the weight transfer and a lot of the power transfer sort of goes into compressing the rear shock on the DR, it doesn't have nearly as much wheelie potential, and it just doesn't feel as quick off the line. And while I'm fully aware that the few simple, free, easy mods that we already did to my buddy Jason's DR650 would certainly improve the performance of mine, there was a piece of the puzzle that I've sort of been noticing the entire time that I've been riding these two bikes, and it's something that I think most DR riders or most dual sport riders in general probably don't put much thought into.
I think partially the reason that I like the XR so much is because it sort of has that lack of a Cush drive gives it kind of an intense feeling. It just, I don't know, it seems more responsive and playful and easier to get the front wheel up. The Cush drive on here I think is a little bit wore in or wore out. It's there's a little bit of slop in it, I've noticed.
But a little might be a bit of an understatement. This really had quite a bit of slop in the forward and reverse directions, but also a bit in the side to side. So rather than just continuing to run this, I decided to at least take it apart and take a look. So I'm going to remove the axle nut here, which on newer models is going to be a locking nut. Older ones will just have the style with the pin in it. We've also got the washer that has to come off here, as well as the chain slack adjustment. And if we remove this side here, you can see that it is actually attached on this side, and there is a little bit of grease on here, so that's definitely a good thing. Work the chain off and try to squeeze the large D-Sport Adventure out of the back swing arm there. Put it on my Tusk tire change stand, and as you can see, there really is just a lot of slop between the outer section here where these interface in between the little rubber dampers here, and essentially the large side is for taking off, the smaller side is for decelerating, and it basically just provides a bit of a cushion between the chain and the rear tire. Now, of course, the right thing to do would be to purchase this $50 polyurethane replacement kit off of ProCycle. However, because I need to get this bike back out on the road to start making videos, I decided to do sort of a, well, trail-side repair that one of you guys suggested. So with all my KLR inner tube shims in place, there was only one thing left to do, and that was see if it would even fit back together. And while it certainly was a bit tight, tight is what I was going for, so I cleaned up all my bushings and re-greased all of the seals, which of course does keep the water and dirt and stuff out of the bearings, but it does also help keep the bushings in place when you go to reassemble everything. I did check all of my bearings, including the Cush drive one, and while a worn out Cush drive certainly can cause issues with a Cush drive bearing, it does seem like mine was spared since I took it apart and, well, hopefully fixed it early enough on. So we'll get a bit of grease in on that other side here, get that bushing in place. And we can remove the rear caliper because this fat D-Sport has a bit of a hard time fitting through there. And with it partially through, I can sort of slide it in alongside of the rotor. We'll get the chain back on. Try to line everything up as best we can. Everything looks like it stayed in place and is in good shape, so we can put that rear axle back through. And then we'll reassemble everything, and of course I'll have to redo my chain slack adjustment here. This is a locking nut, so this is going to take a different torque spec than the other style with the pin in it would. So I'm going to get my torque wrench set to the proper torque spec and get that torqued down. Seems like everything is spinning freely and there are no issues, and of course I'm not a mechanic, but it does seem like this, well, is going to work for the meantime anyways. But of course there's only one way to know whether or not that little bit of slop that I removed is really going to affect the performance of the bike, so let's saddle up and take it out for a quick ride.
Alright, DR, let's see if my little trail side repair did you any good, and we'll see what you've got. Oh yeah. Definitely much better, and I'll be honest, I mean, I was really pretty surprised at how big of a difference this made. Of course, it's not a substitute for actual performance mods, but when I did that test of just the 14-tooth sprocket before I shored up the Cush drive, it seemed like there was something missing, and this was definitely it. Shoring that up, just removing that little bit of slop, definitely made a big difference, and of course, beyond that, it's just the right thing to do. Performance is great, and taking advantage of all the performance that a bike puts out and putting it down onto the ground is of course something that I would assume we all want, but just the fact that having that loose in there could certainly and will wear your Cush drive bearing out much quicker. It's definitely something that I think is worth checking on. So if you guys have a DR650 or really any dual sport with a Cush drive, I think it is certainly worth checking on. Now, this definitely didn't make this bike feel like the XR. It made it feel closer to the XR, and I think part of that just was something that I had picked up on it and didn't realize until I noticed that actual slop in there. There's still a bit of squish in the rear end, just the spring and the shock, more so than the XR. I think it just doesn't quite rev up as fast either. I mean, it's still definitely a fun bike to ride, but my job is to compare the two, so of course I have to tell you guys what I noticed, and that is what I've noticed. That being said, though, I mean, I think this is still a great option and something that I'm going to, of course, continue to mod. We will do performance mods on this bike after I finish the adventure stuff. The first big step towards making this into an adventure dual sport will be, well, it is already done, but will be out in just a couple days here. So I hope you guys are excited about that. I definitely am. Until then, take care, stay safe, stay swanky, get out, enjoy this beautiful world any chance you get. And if you can't do that right now, there's more videos to check out in the meantime.